Oh my gosh, what happened? Well, it blew up. Junk. You know, Suzuki was already bottom of the barrel to begin with, and then you slapped a Kawasaki label on it. So obviously, that's the problem right there. I don't know. But I do know it don't work right. It sort of works. Okay, so here's what happened, right? I took it on a cross Canada trip. And I'm going to put some photos in here because this isn't going to be much of a working video. But the cross Canada trip went from where I am in Ontario through all of Canada out to BC, middle of BC area. We had a lot of fun, me and another buddy. Just had a good time. You know, got some mountain spring water. Look at that water. Look at how clear that is. Ice cold. This bike was doing great. It was getting about 60 miles to the gallon, maybe even a little bit more. Yeah, I had to fill up 28 liter Safari tank, man. I had to fill up like 3 times the whole trip, but it was doing great. You know, I had the panniers on there, and these worked out pretty well. They're the big panniers too. So, I mean, this thing was weighed down. Like, with me on it and all my stuff, I had a tent. We were moto camping. I actually did go through a weigh station, and we checked our weight. I was like 650 pounds or something. Nuts. So, I mean, for all that time, the bike worked really well. Oh, man. Look at that view. That is just gorgeous. Look at the sun coming off the lake. Here's the thing. When I started the trip out, I checked the oil, and the oil was low. So I don't know if it's like an oil burner and that's a pre-existing issue, but I know it's not got anything in it right now. That's for sure. Hashtag foreshadowing. Now I should mention that my problems with this bike start before I even thought about this trip. Okay, this trip was like, hey, buddy, this is my buddy speaking. Hey, man, you want to go out across the country a couple weeks from now? I'm like, yeah. So that was the whole planning process behind that. But probably back in 2022, I had just got this bike, got the modifications done. I guess it would have been because it pretty much was right after the video series. I quit recording for that. And I even stopped recording before I put all the mods on. But in any case, the guy I bought it from had put a Chinese copy of a Mikuni carburetor on, just a stock replacement, right? It's kind of curious as to why he would do that, but in any case, it was working for a while. Okay, I shouldn't say that, because maiden voyage. Maiden voyage. I'm going out to meet my friend on her motorcycle, and the float bowl just cracks. So I'm dumping fuel, and the bike didn't run. I'm just dumping fuel all over the engine. So have to get somebody out there to come trailer me home. And so I put the original, I had tore apart the original carburetor because he gave it to me as well. And I thought there wasn't a whole lot going on with it. It looked pretty good. Put it on, started up, bike's running good. The next day, me and Mom and the neighbor want to go out on a cruise town over, go to a nice restaurant, and the bike won't start. So I just, it was kind of like puttering, right? So I'm mad, I want to go. I just got done fixing this thing. This bike had been nothing but issues. Never got to ride it. Here I am paying insurance for the dang thing. So I just throw it on the ground. I'm like, I'm not dealing with this. So in any case, I ended up taking Mom's car on a moto cruise. That was not a fun day, but I get back to it later. I come to find out, I think I when I was out at lunch is when I ordered the FCR carburetor for it. So I was back home, took it apart. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So I take the carburetor off, and all this fuel dumps out of the throttle intake. Like the cylinder head. And so immediately I know there's a pinhole in the float. And the float is getting stuck open, and it's flooded the engine completely. Like, I mean flood. Like, the engine is completely flooded from drain plug to cylinder head, full of gasoline. So that was not a good day, and I'm sure it didn't do that engine any favors. But I didn't really run it that long with that issue either. So obviously, because it wouldn't run. So I don't know, maybe that could have been a slight contributing factor that the previous owner had as well with this bike. But in any case, that got rectified with the new carburetor. So here's the chronology of mechanical issues, from beginning to kind of middle here. So I topped up the oil, and I would later find out that on the dipstick, if there's just a drop of oil at the end of it, it might not be just a little bit low. It could be very well empty, because that drop will stay there no matter what. But in any case, starting out, it only took maybe half a liter or so. So after I had topped up the oil, I topped up the fuel from a jerry can thing. I think actually I drained it out of an Aprilia, if I recall correctly, that I had gotten from a trade deal. I had bought a Triumph 765, traded it for 2 Aprilias and cash, that were in pretty poor shape, mind you. But anyway, I drained the fuel out of that. So, but then it also sat in that can. It was a Spectra 25 liter can. It wasn't one of those. It was one of those ones that didn't have the vent on the back of the handle. So, but in any case, it was a good seal on that can. So theoretically, it shouldn't have absorbed the rainwater. But I recall it being better when I drained it out, because when I poured it into the DRZ, I noticed it was a little off color, and it had a different smell to it. But in any case, I poured it all in there, and then immediately I had started it up. I had just gotten ready to go, ready to hit the road, and not 5 minutes of running and the thing shuts off. And I was having a fit. I'm like, I've got to go. You know, my buddy's waiting on me already, pretty much. He wasn't, but, like, what's the deal here now? Like, I'm already having issues. So, I pull the bike apart. Well, I pull the airbox apart, and I look at things, and I'm hemming and hawing, and I figure, well, fuel, spark, air, right? The thing turns over, so I figure what I'll do is I'll disconnect the fuel, and then I'll spray ether in it. And if it starts on some ether, then we've got spark and we've got compression, right? And air. So then it would be a fuel issue at that point. So I immediately do that. It starts, and I'm figuring, oh, okay, well, maybe there's some kind of blockage or whatever. So I drain a little bit of the tank, and I notice, oh, it's probably like some water in that fuel, right? So I drain it until it starts coming out a little bit more clear. So I then put everything back, start it up, runs good. All right, let's go. So I figure, well, I'll probably want to, how do you put it? Dilute the watery fuel, whatever might be left of it, with fresh fuel. So that's what I do at the pump, and it works great for maybe 500 kilometers. And then I start noticing as I'm hitting construction zones, it'll bog down. Like when I hit the front brake to a construction zone, it'll bog down for a little bit afterwards. So I figure, oh no, there's still water in it. And when I hit the brake, it's sloshing it around. And I'll show you here. From that one side of the tank, there's still a lot of material or a lot of fuel and water on that one side that keeps sloshing back up every now and again. Of course, water is heavier than fuel, so it immediately floats down to where the petcock is. So that's what's bogging me down. Then I got to run through that a little bit to get it going again. So it was maybe 800 kilometers into the trip. I stop at a fuel station and I drain the tank again. And again, there's a lot of water. It was actually at a gas, like I had just filled it up, and then I couldn't start it. So I drained it again. So I don't know, maybe I got some bad fuel as well at a pump somewhere. And some bikers, some Harley gang bikers actually came over and kind of helped me and looked at it and gave their opinion. They were like, hey, if you need a ride somewhere, we can help you. But thankfully I was able to get it started, and kudos to them anyway. I got it started, got it back on the road, got to my buddy's place, still kind of bogging down here and there. So I figure, well, okay, I'm just going to sacrifice all this fuel, and that's 28 liters of fuel, that's times that, that's all, what's that? It's not quite $50, but that's a good amount of money in fuel. I'm just like, I can't afford to have any more issues with this, so I drain it all and fill it up with fresh, good fuel. Then I start it up again, go out, and it's still bogging down. So I figure, okay, there's something else with this bogging down stuff. Pull it apart. This time I take the carburetor off. And here's what I find in the main jet. Yeah, I don't know what it is, just some bit of detritus. So I figure what was happening with this bogged down situation was actually a fuel starvation issue. That little piece of detritus was on throttle up, getting sucked in there occasionally, and then you throttle down, you didn't need the fuel, it would kind of fall out. I think that's what was happening. But anyway, thankfully I got that cleaned out of there, and I installed a fuel filter in between the petcock and the carburetor. So thankfully I didn't have any more issues with that. Now, the Safari tanks, they say that some of them, like that, you should wash it out, kind of, because there could be some bits of plastic in there from the molding process and the finishing process, which is fair. I think I did wash it out with maybe a liter of fuel, but still, it could, maybe it was something there, maybe it was something from the fuel, maybe it was something from the air. Who really knows where that came from? But that's just a little point. So I put everything back together, now the bike's running good. Okay, and now we can resume on the trip across the country.
See the train?
Yeah, look at that train.
It's still coming through town. Oh, Lynn is just in town now.
Oh my goodness.
You gotta wonder how the hundreds of tons of cargo is on that, eh?
Well, it's no wonder they go up to like 2% grade at what? 20 mile an hour?
Yeah, something like that.
Just look at that, eh?
Imagine if you had a house right up here, eh?
Oh, yeah. I mean, imagine if I was Bill Gates, but you know. Still with all that smoke, eh? It just keeps going up and up, eh?
I know.
This is what we came for, right here.
Maybe it's a logging road, eh?
Oh, I would imagine. I mean, they look at the logs.
You know the mile markers too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's Western Red Cedar.
Logging trucks in here.
Yeah, this is, you know, man,
That's why you see all those little pull-offs and shit.
this would be fun in a truck, guaranteed. So, unfortunately, the camera is junk. But we're here. And that dot in the sky that you see up there is a satellite moving. You should be able to tell.
Through space and time.
Through space and time. Judging by the other dot on the screen. Oh, I wish this thing didn't break its own camera, man. But yeah, that stationary one is an actual star, and that other one is a satellite. Kind of crazy.
And that gas would be ignited by a pilot light, and it would be a 6-inch open flame coming off the top of your forehead. And you can imagine why this isn't very safe in a coal mine, so these were phased out very, very quickly. Favorite this right here. This is called a safety lamp. As you can see, it can get pretty nice and bright. You can see everything around you, you can tell what you're mining. But this would burn way too much fuel for your 12-hour shift.
So as you can tell, we had a pretty good time. We went out to BC, back Saskatchewan, Alberta. Didn't really have a whole lot of mechanical issues. The brake light went out on Buddy's KTM there. But yeah, the bike was doing great. 45 to 60 mile per gallon. I went like 9,000 kilometers or something like that. It was insane. I actually found that we were getting better fuel mileage the farther west we went. And my buddy had 2 empty Pepsi bottles that were clear that he used as reservoir tanks because the tank on the KTM wasn't quite big enough. So we had extra fuel reserve, but we noticed that the farther west we went, the clearer the fuel was. So it seems to me there was probably less ethanol in it. But still, a difference between 45 to 60 miles per gallon. That is a huge leap, especially for a DRZ with a FCR carburetor on it. FCR 39 carburetor. But yeah, no, it was doing great. Wasn't leaking oil. Wasn't just didn't sputter. Didn't do anything like that. It was perfect. So I was getting back and spent a couple days at another buddy's place, and on the way back, and I was just leaving town. It wasn't even a mile out of town. I was going up a hill, and boom, engine locks right up. So I immediately, like, the tire's skidding, I'm skidding down, well, skidding up the hill. So I pull in the clutch, pull her over to the side of the road. Just at this time, some bikers actually stopped and asked if I needed any help, and unfortunately, it's not like you can just rebuild an engine on the side of the highway in a very, very, very small town in the middle of nowhere with no tools. But in any case, that was nice of them. So I pulled the Kickstarter out. I'm like, well, it's not going to hurt to try and restart it. So it was immediately difficult. Like, I could not hardly push it down at all. It was just eking. And I was jumping on this Kickstarter. And finally I did get it to break free, which was a surprise. I kicked it over, wouldn't start, but it was making the sounds, you know. At this point, I'm going to obviously have to go back to Buddy's house. So I turned around, I was going down the hill. I figure I might as well try and bump start it going down the hill, see what happens, because the engine's already blown. And wouldn't you know it, but it took a while before it finally actually fired up. I couldn't believe it, and I was not going to let off the gas. So I kept her in high range, made it back to Buddy's place. As soon as I got back, it died. And I think he might have just been coming home at that time, so I had him push me, try and start it again, and it definitely, like, it started, but I could barely make it down the street before it died again, and it was severely lacking in power. Like, before I could, like, crack the throttle a little bit, I could get the front end to lift up just a bit without the clutch, but it wasn't having it this time. So I knew almost without a doubt immediately piston rings, because I figured what had happened was, now this could have been helped with the water intrusion, definitely. However, I think this may have also been a pre-existing issue, whether it's some kind of design issue from the factory, and that, you know, it was a well-maintained bike before that. But like I said, before I ever started out, this thing was low on oil, which tells me that, because I had filled the oil up before, and then it ran it a couple times and it was low. So this tells me that this was an ongoing issue, quite possibly, perhaps exacerbated by the trip and the water and the various complications of adding a bigger carburetor on it, probably too. But nonetheless, of course, I had over 600 pounds on this bike as well, total, with me on it and the bike and everything. So there's that, of course. But like, anyway, it's still, I feel like it was an underlying issue, right? And perhaps this is why the original owner got rid of it, to me. So that was not fun to deal with. So we me and my buddy drained the oil out of it. So first I took the dipstick off, and here's what that looked like. So there, like I say, there was a drop of oil on the end of the dipstick. Okay, so it almost looked like it had oil in it, but it didn't, because that drop will stay there forever. But there was a lot of smoke. So that tells me that the combustion is getting past the rings, almost without a doubt. There could be some valve train issues in there somewhere too. I wouldn't doubt it. Maybe timing chain. I don't know, but I mean, it was running. But that amount of smoke coming out of the oil fill cap is sounds to me like rings. Like I say, I haven't taken anything apart yet, so we'll see. But I mean, I don't really want to bother taking things apart until I can afford to rebuild it. But that's going to be a few $1,000s. So we drained the oil, and here is what that looked like. Not good, right? Tons of flakes in there, small chunks. And now here's how much oil came out of it. Yeah, that is not good. I don't know how long it had been without oil. I had taken some oil with me, actually, because I figured, well, if it's low on oil at the start of the trip, it'll be low on oil halfway through. But I was checking it, but because of that drop in there, I thought, oh, maybe. And I didn't really put much in. That's the thing. Like, I was topping it up, but I never put that much in because I thought, oh, there's a drop on it, so it only needs a little bit, because that's what it needed at the start of the trip, you know. Maybe a quarter of a liter, you know, just a quick squirt. Evidently, that was incorrect. So this raises a huge issue for me, because I bought this bike for the sole purpose of having it be reliable, number one. Okay? This bike has, like, what, 17,000, 14,000, 17,000 clicks on it now? Somewhere in that range? I don't know. Battery's dead. Can't be bothered to look. That should be a lot higher for a DRZ. I was getting good fuel mileage, granted, with it, even with the FCR. However, it was not good enough. At 45, because that's what the fuel will get me around here on this side of the country with all the ethanol they put in it, is about 45 miles a gallon. My Aprilias get 35, okay? And my SXV lasted me to, like, I think it was 44,000 kilometers. Between 40 and 44, I can't remember. Man. Okay, granted, there was a couple of rebuilds in... I think the original rebuild was done at, like, 22,000. So, that's more than the DRZ. And it's ugly. This DRZ is ugly. Like, I can't be seen on this thing if there's not some good advantages to it, you know? Like, if you date somebody ugly, they better have a good personality. I just want to say that. Like, you gotta have something going for you in order to be, like, just come on. Like, what's going on here? Why is the DRZ? I get why the DRZ is so popular, right? Because it's cheap. At least when it's not brand new. You know, you can pick one up for, like, even $3,000 on the low end, which is still high for what it really is. But Suzuki hasn't fixed any of its issues because they keep the thing around because it has grandfathered in status with emissions. So they don't want to have to spend the money to update any of the emissions. Like, this is the only thing that is still being sold on pretty much any market outside of, like, little scooter markets. Like, it's the only thing manufactured and sold in a Western country that has a carburetor anymore. There's still issues with the bike that they haven't fixed because those issues came later, and those they came up during those emissions laws. So the only good thing, in my mind now, that the DRZ has going for it is parts availability. Now, granted, that is way better than the Aprilia market, which sucks, because the Aprilia, as far as I'm concerned, is a much better bike. Surprisingly, in my experience. Like I say, I got over 40,000 kilometers on my Aprilia SXV 550 2008. Like I say, maintenance involved, but realistically, it didn't even have to be that much. Like, I could have probably had Alan Noland reuse the original piston cylinders and bearings and such. Craig, I know, is going to jump in here somewhere, and that's fine, to say, oh, you know, you got to use my Aprilia mod, and I'll throw up a picture here of his mod. Now, it's a very interesting idea, and perhaps some of you out there would like to try it. It's an oil bypass mod, so it lowers the oil pressure going through the oil pump, I believe. Bypasses it, gets it out of the crankcase, lower crankcase, theoretically. Yeah, that's my experience with the DRZ. But let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on what I should do with the DRZ, as far as, because I'm looking at a stage 2 cam, hot rods, 470 big bore stroker kit, as well as a MCT upgraded fifth gear for taller highway gears. It's going to cost a bit. It'd cost a bit of money to get all that done. However, I think if I'm going to bother to rebuild it, like, it's going to cost a couple grand to rebuild it with stock parts anyway. Might as well rod the thing up. It's already unreliable, you know. Like, this has been the most unreliable hunk of junk I have ever owned. Like, man, I am not kidding you. Like, I own a Mopar product. It's called a Jeep. But I got the good one, right? Supposedly the good one. And it is. It's great. I own a couple of them, actually. But this bike, oh, it's the herald of supermoto reliability because it's underpowered and all this and that. And I was having issues with it from the start. So, let me know what bike you think would be a better option. You know, maybe a WR450. Maybe I should just bite the bullet and get a KTM 500 EXC. I mean, here's the thing. I'm already this deep into this bike. I'm not going to make my money back hawking this thing onto the next poor bastard that gets this and then tries to do something with it, right? Like, I could barely sell. I probably couldn't even sell this thing for $2,000 the way it sits. Maybe with the panniers and the, you know, all the extra parts I have in the shed, nobody's going to want to buy this thing. Might as well just blow my load into this bike and try and make it into something that's half decent, and then hopefully it'll last a bit longer, but probably not because it's a 470. So the next time you see me, I'll probably have like a crankshaft through my ankle. Can I blame myself again? Probably. I'm an idiot. I've got a low IQ, you know. Room temperature in Celsius IQ. Otherwise, you know what? That trip went awesome. Like, I couldn't have asked for a better trip. Because we did moto camping, the whole thing was going to cost me like $2,000 or just less than $2,000 to go across the continent and back. Well, there's the update. It's not great. And DRZs still suck in my opinion, and you shouldn't get one. Don't get an Aprilia either. Leave those to me. But what you should get, apparently, is a KTM 690. That's what my buddy rode, and he didn't have any problems with it.